Bring it together. Now, Lian's presentation really set the context for what I'm about to present, because this is a follow-up of a previous presentation. And what I'm going to do is just take you from the point where we spoke about why Cape Town wants to take a socially responsible or socially conscious design route, and then take it from there to what are the next steps in terms of the World Design Capital process. Sorry. Just to give you a quick summary, the World Design Capital is an ICSID project, which ostensibly is to promote design and also to show how design can actually improve the life of a city. And what happens is, because ICSID got to, I think it was almost an existential crisis, where the idea was it was associated more with the corporate world, and people were starting to ask questions about what about the other people that live in the 90% of the reality that we know, what we refer to as the majority world context, or what sometimes is referred to as designing for the other 90% of the population. And so through that, ICSID did come up with a project, which is what we want to discuss here. Sorry. Oh, I'm going backwards. And the first city to get that designation was Torino. So it was a pilot, and that was in 2008. And through that, Torino used a very interesting model, which was to say that because it had a long history of design, in fact, if you remember, Fiat and other big industrial companies had offices there, and the city went into decline, and Milan appeared to take over in terms of getting a design identity, especially because of fashion design and so on. And so it decided to seek an urban renewal using this pilot project. And it was designated in 2008. I've taken deliberate shots of these cities at night because I'd like to emphasize that what usually constitutes design is not just the obvious. It's not just the physical manifestation of a cityscape. It's not just the obvious landmarks and monuments from a purely architectural point of view, but it's actually about the energy of the place, and the energy is best expressed here. So that's the next city is South Korea. And Seoul, just this past year, was the World Design Capital. And as you know, many of the biggest brands coming out of that country have found their way into this market. It has the biggest and best known consumer electronics, Samsung, LG, and also others. But what's interesting, and I'd like you just to take note of this Dongdaemun design plaza that is in the middle of Seoul. They took the opportunity to design something of a landmark, an iconic structure that best exemplified the power and the optimism that comes with design. I'll emphasize the point about optimism in a few minutes. And what South Korea did was it adopted this concept of design for all. Now, design for all is got other synonyms in other countries. So, for example, in the US and Japan, it's known as universal design. In the UK, it's known as inclusive design. And what it seeks to do is to bring together the diverse constituencies that designers usually deal with. And many times designers forget those. So for example, we bring into the fore the concerns of people with disabilities, women, children, foreigners, and the elderly. We often don't think enough about those categories. And so Seoul decided to take this as their theme. And then the last city which I'm presenting here is Helsinki, which has been designated the World Design Capital for 2012. And as you know, Helsinki is associated with Nokia, among others. I think our Dean Johannes just reminded me of the history of this Nokia company and how it started from lumbering and then moved on into diversifying just to respond to the various needs that came up. And Helsinki, beyond that, is not really any different from most European cities. But it did do one thing. It talked about embedding design in all that they do. So it took it from just looking at industrial design or people like Alvar Aalto, famous architects and furniture designers, and said, we want it to be embedded in everything that is associated with the city. So that's a very unique perspective. And so just to summarize very quickly in terms of, these are just captions, only the last one really, the second one is actually specifically linked to a theme, is just looking at how design speaks to a much wider constituency, how it embraces a constituency that is often diverse and complex. And if you look at Torino's bid, it was looking at flexibility and how it looks at design as infusing everything that they do. So I just coined it as design through all the different projects and ideas that they came up with. And then if you look at Seoul, it explicitly designed for everyone. So it was designed for all. And then Helsinki talked about embedding design in everything, in life, in everything that they did. And that became, this is in a sense a stepping stone now into what hopefully Cape Town could do in terms of leveraging itself. And so the idea of live design, transform life, which is essentially about socially conscious design and socially responsible design, becomes the umbrella that defines everything that we do. Now, Cape Town has over 1,000 creative industries. This is sometimes well known, sometimes not. And the publication of the design bid book has some excellent examples of what happens in this city. And what the committee, that many members of the bid committee are present here, sought to do was to say that we do not claim, like the other cities, to have a long tradition of design, but we can harness the power of design to actually start to transform the lives of our people. And the complex constituency that I mentioned becomes this explicit expression. So again, trying to say that beyond the mountain there's more, and I think the night shot shows, if anything, that our city is possibly more beautiful than the others at night, as well as in the daytime. And so I talked about optimism earlier on, and that is expressed by the smiley face there. Design is an optimistic profession. Designers believe, rightfully or otherwise, that they can make a difference, a positive difference. Designers believe that they're part of the solution. And designers believe that if they are not part of the solution, then they're essentially creative busybodies. So if design then can start to see itself as engaging with the real issues, the real aspirational and life challenges that the city residents deal with on a daily basis, then we start to say then design is relevant to what we do. It's also important for designers to say that we need to justify our profession. If we don't design for this complex constituency, then we're speaking to a very small audience, and that's not sufficient to justify everything that we've learned and all the goodwill that society has invested in us. And so this particular bid looks at how design can actually promote inclusiveness and participation, and how it can also become the tool that harnesses and unites people in a country and possibly a continent where politics has been often a very divisive topic. Design becomes this unifying agenda that everyone can actually access. And so we talk about the benefits directly for the city. I think Leanne has shown other examples, so I'll just skip through this. And the city is going to be under the spotlight. There's going to be a lot of media attention. There's going to be visitors. There's going to be benchmarking from the rest of the African continent. And notice that I speak as if it has happened already, but I need to just say that before we get there, there's some very specific things that we need to capture. For example, we already know about what happened in October 2010 about the call. On the 31st of March, the bid closed. And Bulelwa, who is MD at the Cape Town Partnership, has already even presented the bid book to the mayor of this city. And the book has gone off to Montreal, and it's solidly in their possession. So we've actually ticked off all the boxes up to the point of pre-qualification. Now, the biggest challenge begins during the process of this month and what started last month and ends this month, which is to review all the applications. To date, I think there are over 50 applications from different parts of the world. And I have been informed that Africa has expressed interest, but I would venture my guess that Cape Town has the most serious bid in that process. And then what happens in June, there's going to be, all the packages will be presented to the selection committee. And now this selection committee it includes the ICSID president, as well as some international designers, including the CEO of Elephant Design, who's from Japan, Professor Meyerson from the UK, and others. And then once they do that, then they shortlist the cities, and in August they start visiting the cities that have been shortlisted. And in September, the final selection will be done. And this year in Taipei, in October, there's going to be an International Design Alliance Congress. And at that meeting, then there's going to be an announcement of who wins. And the number of events that follows, including the signing ceremony, which is where the actual memorandum of understanding is signed, happens. And then there's what traditionally is known as the New Year's Eve of Design, which is the official launch of the design calendar. So this city now, as we start planning for that, needs to start to populate an entire year-long calendar of events that we intend to have. And this will include, of course, among others, the design conference, which is going to bring people together, not only from this continent and the country, but also from much wider field. And then there's an international design house, which is essentially an expo-like event where people bring their designs and showcase their best talents. And then a convocation ceremony, which is the official handing over to the next city that becomes the World Design Capital. So just picking up then, what we see as live, design, transform life is essentially a focus on inclusion, participation, and co-creation. It's saying that Cape Town sees this opportunity as a transformative, that design has transformative potential, and we want to tap into that energy. We have visions, I've heard variously of Vision 2030, which is about reconnecting the land and the sea, and many other ideas about that. We will obviously require some iconic structure or something that we can rally around as an inspiration of what we all do. Now, just to take you back to the Seoul example, the building that they came up with at the plaza was designed for all. So it's not just a statement, the theme needs to be captured, so we need to come up with something that indeed shows us how we live, design, and transform life. We need to also look at the long-term benefits to the city, not just the short-term benefits of a couple of visitors and exciting things happening, and to also engender this participation as an annual kind of ritual that brings residents together to celebrate this uniqueness of being Cape Townians. And so, just to summarize very quickly, you notice a little asterisk there. I've been very confident in my presentation so far, but I have to say, like most insurance salesmen, that terms and conditions apply. I'm very optimistic that Cape Town has a very good chance of not just getting the nod for Africa, but it is indeed one of the best bids I've seen put together. So I've got no doubt that we have a very good fighting chance. So if then you say Torino was about design through all and Seoul was design for all, and Helsinki is design in all, then my thinking is that Cape Town is design with all. It's an invitation to everyone to participate, to co-create this vision of who we actually can be as a city. In spite of all the various complexities and histories we have, that becomes the catalyst for this newness of an identity that we seek. And so there's no question about why we would support this bid. And I would ask that you give it your utmost support and start to think positively. Like I said at the beginning, designers are optimistic people, and we actually do believe that something very, very good is going to happen from this entire process. Thank you very much.